Genesis X2 is happening this weekend. It actually starts tomorrow as of uploading this video, and I wanted to go over my bracket predictions using StartGG and upsets.gg. I'm going to be starting from the pools before top 64 and then go over top 64 and see what's going to happen there so we can talk about the Genesis X2, who's there, who's going, what upsets I think are going to happen, or generally what the results of the tournament probably will be. Like that, let's go. So first off, we have Raru's pool. Raru is going to play Yurne, I think that's how you pronounce that, who is a Min main. Raru, very experienced against Min, has a lot of Dawn and Miggy practice. Raru's going to win that. Smirk versus Jared is King. Smirk, I believe, is a Bowser main versus Jared is King's Shulk. I actually think Jared is King is going to win that, so he's going to be the one fighting against Raru, but I still think Raru, even though Shulk can do well versus Luigi, I still think Raru's going to win that just because Raru is godlike. At the lower half, we have Beast Mode Paul and Bacon. Beast Mode Paul will probably beat the Dr. Mario player Bacon, and then Mr. E plays Sabaten. Who is Sabaten? I feel like I recognize that tag. Sabaten is a Rob main from Japan, but I do think Mr. E has been playing super well recently, so he will meet Beast Mode Paul, but Beast Mode Paul is so beast. He is so good, so I do think Raru and Beast Mode Paul are both going to win out their pools. I think this pool is basically turned out as expected, except I think Jared is King will beat Smirk. Next up, we have Sonics' pool, which I think Sonics is going to win out regardless. Sonics is very strong. He will beat Sam's Steve. I believe this is the Steve from BC. Ludo has to play Kyon's Link. I think Ludo will win that. Ludo is quite strong. I feel like he's also getting better in SoCal as well. And then Sonics will beat Ludo, which I think that makes sense. Taike over D tier. Low key, I can see D tier winning that. I don't know how Sonic versus Ice Climbers is. Obviously, if you get separated, it's really rough. But I do think that Ice Climbers has a lot of tools to deal with Sonic, mostly Blizzard Wall. So that can be a little bit interesting. And then we have Moku Moku. I don't know who that is. Moku Moku is a Yoshi from Japan, so that probably can be a little bit awkward seeing as Yoshi does well versus Game & Watch, but I do think Monty will be a little bit more solid and advance here. And again, I think honestly, if Taike's here, Taike will probably beat Monty, but if it's D tier, well, no, I still think I think whoever wins this one is actually going to make top 64, so I think that will be Taike, but I definitely can see D tier doing that. Next up, we have a crazy stacked pool. Lima versus Mewtwo I think Lima will win that pretty handily. I think that Mewtwo I mean, I played him online, he's pretty passive, and Lima will just eat that for breakfast. No issue there. So Lima will advance there. Danny Toothany versus Echo. Echo is a really good Palutena, but I think Danny's been kind of on another level recently for his standard, so he will make it there, but Lima will probably end up beating Danny. It'll be a close set. I mean, maybe not in terms of set count, but in terms of games. So I do think Lima will advance there. Then we have Louis Money versus Subasua. I don't know who this player is, so I think Louis Money will win that. I mean, Louis Money's just been playing super consistently recently anyway. And then JDV versus Marvelous Marco. Even though Marvelous Marco is good, I think JDV is, again, he's probably the second best Pac-Man in the world at the moment, so he will advance. And then Loki, I think JDV is going to win this versus Louis Money. I don't remember if they've played recently, but I think JDV is just going to have a good tournament. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Louis won, but JDV is just super good, and I think this is going to be a good Pac-Man tournament. Shootone will beat Luisfer, even though Luisfer is a very good player, but I think Shootone has just been, he's actually been playing ridiculous recently. Sparkle versus Chad Scrow. I think Sparkle will win that, and Shootone will beat Sparkle. Jazzo versus Ven. I can low-key see Ven doing that, but I don't know how he deals with the Shoto Rushdown, so I will still give it to Jazzo. And then we have Yonepi versus Nexus. Pichu versus Falco is definitely good for Pichu, and then Pichu versus the Shotos, in my opinion, pretty good for Pichu as well, so I think Yonepi is going to make it to top 64 winners, just saying. Next up, we have Hurt's pool. Hurt will beat Vins, and I know Void actually is not showing up, so this will be Hurt versus Vendetta. And then I think, even though I feel like the Shotos have been doing better versus the Snake players, I still think Hurt is too strong right now, so he will win that. He will win that. Dabuz versus Random MNK. It doesn't really matter who this is. I think Dabuz is going to win. And then Jogibu versus Quinn. That's going to be a hot set, by the way. This should definitely be streamed. Hype Captain Falcon player, and Quinn, I feel like doesn't go to a lot, but is a very strong player with the Samus and Palu that they both play. But I do think Jogibu will win that because he's just so explosive, and Captain Falcon is underrated. He's underrated, y'all. And then Dabuz will probably beat Jogibu because it's Dabuz, and Rushdown versus Dabuz is really difficult if you're not named Light or Spargo. Next up, we have MK Leo's pool. MK Leo versus Synergy. Even though Synergy is very strong, great Robin player. I've played him fairly recently at the Full Order tournament that I went to in January. MK Leo is MK Leo. It'll be really hard for him to shut him down. And then we have Iba, who's a Zero Suit main, and we actually have two Zero Suits here, so regardless of who wins, it's going to be MK Leo versus Zero Suit, and I think Leo will beat both of them. I don't know how good Iba is, but they are seated above Shu. But I'm going to give it to Shu. Let's go, Shu. Shu. I'll give it to Shu because I know her. She's super strong. Then we have Ken versus Skinny the Pooh. Skinny the Pooh, of course, is fantastic. Has upset MKLeo in the past, but I think Ken is really, really good. And then we have Kid versus Omega Rugal. I think Kid will win that. He's been playing super well recently. He hasn't gotten like top 8 out any of these majors, but he's just basically losing to top players. And then we have Kid versus Ken. I do think Ken will win this. I don't know how you play Sonic versus, I mean, maybe I'll see if Kid wins this. I'll be so happy because I can watch the VODs and I can learn, because I don't know how you play Brawler versus Sonic without just hard reading every single thing that they do. So I will give it to Ken there. Next up, we have Snow and Sticky. Sticky is a good Fox main, but Snow will probably be dominant there. We have Base Mage versus Parmesan. Base Mage will win. It is so hard to be Base Mage if you're not like a super top player. No offense to Parmesan, obviously. We have Siski versus Toru. Toru has been doing really well, and I do think that actually Palutena can be a little hard for Samus. But I'm still going to give it to Siski, but it'll be a close set. It'll be closer than you would expect. Goblin versus Era. I don't remember who Era is. Era is a Steve main, and I see Salt's probably NorCal, so I have no idea how good they are, but I'm going to give it to Goblin, because Goblin CFL GOAT, and then Siski will probably beat either of these players. I know that Goblin, I think, has done well versus the Samuses before, but I think Siski, I feel like has been playing super well, and Samus is just so hard to deal with in a best-of-5 format, in my opinion. So yeah, I do think Siski will win that to advance to top 64. Winners, next up we have Tweak's Plan. Tweak will beat Temporary Plan, even though Temporary Plan has been doing well at the local recently. I know Temporary Plan has been doing very well in, I believe, Utah. So Tweak will win that though, because it's Tweak. Then we have Kurama versus Andric. Low key, nah, I mean, that matchup's really bad. I think Mario just destroys Captain Falcon because it's basically like, hey, I'll do everything you do, except I'm slightly less fast, but my combos are significantly better. So Kurama will win that. And then Tweak versus Kurama will be a pretty good set, but I think Tweak is just more on it recently compared to Kurama. So I do think Tweak will win that. I wouldn't be surprised if Kurama won, but I kind of would at the same time. Riddles versus Widara. Who's Widara? Shout out to Smasher's app, by the way. It's one I'm using to look up all these players that I don't know. Widara is a Bowser Jr. main. Riddles is going to win that, I feel like. Just no issue there. And then we have Gact versus FD. I do think Gact will win that. Gact is super, super strong. And then we have Riddles versus Gact, which I do think, honestly, Gact can do really well. It depends on how well Riddles is playing, because Riddles sometimes is a very hot and cold player. He also will be in Street Fighter at the same tournament. So I'm going to give it to Gact, actually, solo focus, as well as, you know, I feel like Gact has just been so good recently, so I'm going to give it to Gact there. Also, Ness versus the Shotos are really awkward because you're going to get edge guarded super hard, and Riddles will just have to hit every single combo, and I do think he has to play Kazuya here, not Terry, but I do think he's been playing more Terry, so I will give it to Gact there. Next up, we have Cola. Cola probably will beat Trim. I know he has struggled with Peanut fairly recently. I think Peanut did beat him at a tournament recently, but I do think Cola will still win that because Cola is terrifying. Then we have Pharaoh and Peppa. I think Pharaoh will win that. I think Pharaoh's playing pretty well recently, but I will give Cola the edge in the match versus Pharaoh. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't actually know how Roy does versus Yoshi. I think it's probably an evenish matchup, but I do think Cola will just win. He's very skilled. We have Rafflo and Shrutik. Rafflo has been playing very well recently, kind of like a lot of these players, but Rafflo is just so good. So I will give Rafflo the win there. But then we have Chag versus Abe. I do think Chag will beat Abe. And then we have the Paluditto, and I have no idea because I feel like Chag at the moment, like Chag had his like peak in like 2021, early 2022, and everyone was like, oh my god, he's like the best Palu. He's top like 20. And then definitely has had not that performances recently, but I do think he's still super slept on because he's a very strong player, and I do think that it is possible that Chag just randomly makes the god run. So I'm not 100% sure who will win that. I will give it to Rafflo for consistency sake, but I think Chag is so slept on. It also plays Min Min now, so if Rafflo is not confident versus Min Min, that can be a little bit of a struggle. We did see, I think, Dora Migi beat Rafflo at, what was that tournament called? GSM. So, you know, if Chag wants to do that, maybe that will work, but at the same time, the Paluditto will be very interesting to see there. Next up, we have Crepsele versus Daze or Daze. I think Crep will win that. He's strong. He's a strong player. We have MVD and Anthony Isn't Cool. Anthony Isn't Cool, I believe, a Cloud player. MVD will probably win that. Is fairly confident versus Cloud. MVD versus Crepe is going to be interesting, but I do think Crepesole will win that. Steve is dumb. Steve is really dumb, and then of course has the ability to go Rob or go Wario on specific counter picks, so the stages will always be comfortable for him. That will be a good set though, in my opinion. Maybe MVD will win. I mean, MVD has been playing well. He did top 8 Battle of BC with some pretty good wins, but I don't know how he's going to play versus Steve. He has been in South Florida. I don't know if he's played against Riku's Steve or if Riku's just been playing Pokemon Trainer because he's been doing that recently, so I don't know how warmed up he is in the Steve matchup, but I wouldn't be surprised at this upset. Next up, we have T and Yanni. I didn't even realize Yanni was going, but T will win that. T is strong. T is a very strong player. Then we have Beastly and Azrael. I was actually super happy to see Beastly as high ranked as he is, because I feel like Beastly does really well and loses top 5 or game 5 to every top player he plays, but always brings every top player to game 5. So I'm glad he's there. But Beastly will win here, but then have to play Diddy Kong versus Pac-Man. And if you're not Tweak, you're not winning that matchup. So I do think T will win that. Unfortunately for Beastly, shoutouts Beastly. Next up, we have Akola versus Fire the Pyro. Shoutouts me, Brawler, but Akola will probably win that because Akola is strong. Then we have Kirirash and Spritzy. Low-key, I think Spritzy's going to win this. Kirirash is very strong. Of course, he's a good Luigi player, but I'm not sure how you hit Toon Link in that matchup. And Spritzy, of course, kind of raw. He's kind of really good. And then we're going to have Akola beat whoever comes out of this area, because Akola is impossible to hit. And how do you do anything as Toon Link in this matchup when walls are there? I'm not 100% sure. Then we have Apollo Kage versus the Beck, who is Yeast. I believe Osh9 beat Apollo Kage. I do know that I've been practicing with AK, so he's a little bit more competent at the Mii Brawler matchup. But I do think Yeast he's been playing super well, so I wouldn't be surprised if Yeast won, but I will give it to Apollo Kage. Then we have Maidorna HO, which is the Donkey Kong from Japan, very strong, versus Sho. I think Sho will win that. Sho is probably, he's a very underrated player in my opinion, doesn't go out to a whole ton. And I can't imagine Meta Knight versus DK is good for DK, so I'm going to say Sho is going to win that. But I do think, honestly, whoever wins out of Apollo Kage and Yeast will make it out of pools in winners. So I think regardless of who wins this, I think this will be the match to determine who makes it out of pools to eventually lose to Akola. Next up, we have Light versus Pure Salt. Light has been on another level recently, so Light will win that. MFA versus Osh9. Loki, I think Osh9 is going to win that. I mean, Mii Brawler does well versus Olimar, who is MFA's main. And then Captain Falcon, I still think Osh9 will win that. I saw MFA lose to a worse, or maybe it wasn't MFA, but I feel like Mii Brawler versus Falcon and Olimar are both good for Brawler, so I think Osh will win that. But Light will probably win. I could see Osh9 winning, but Light will probably win because it's Light on regardless of who is here. Kananabe versus Valor. I think Valor is a Shoto main, but Kananabe will probably win that because Kananabe is strong. And if he needs to, he'll just go his trusty Mii Sword Fighter. Then we have Luigi and Nessboy. Nessboy literally just had a couple upsets at the pre-local that happened yesterday. So I do think, Nessboy can win, but I don't know how Ness versus Luigi is. And Luigi is really good, so I will say Luigi wins that. And then Kananabe versus versus Luigi. That's a hard matchup for Fox, of course. So maybe Mii Sword Fighter will come out here. I'm not sure who will win this. That'll be really close. I will give it to Luigi, but if Nessboy's there, I think Kananabe will win. But that's a hot pool. That's a good lower half of this pool. Zombo will beat Nebodax, and honestly will probably beat either Modzai or Colorando. Colorando's been playing Wolf a little bit more. I do think Modzai will beat Colorando. I can't imagine Pac-Man versus Inkling is good for Inkling, and Zombo will just beat both of these people. Then we have Shiny Mark versus Skeletal. Shiny Mark will win that. He is very, very strong. And then Shiny Mark versus Yama D. No, Yama D versus Yoda Cage first. Loki, I can see Yoda Cage winning that. I don't know if there are any Rosas in Philly, and I don't know how often Yoda Cage has played someone like DeBuzz's Rosa, but I do think Yama D will win that. But I believe Shiny Mark will beat Yama D. He's really good, and I don't think Yama D's offense will be explosive enough to deal with Shiny Mark, because that's what you need against Shiny Mark, is a super explosive offense, but also not to get timed out. Next up, we have Mia versus Shine. Mia will win. We have M Popo versus Icon. Who's M Popo? M Popo is a French Rosalina, so I can definitely see that being a rough matchup for Ryu. I still think Icon will win that though, because Icon is very good, but it doesn't matter who of these two people will win because Mia will beat either of them. Mia is so ridiculous right now. Umeki versus Ponflex. I think Umeki will win that. It's really hard to deal with a Peach and Daisy at this level. Then we have Big Boss versus Kronos. I can low-key see Kronos winning this. I don't know how good Big Boss does versus Alan Dis or any of the other snakes he plays, but I do think Big Boss will win. I can see Kronos winning. I wouldn't be surprised, because I also don't know how active Kronos has been, but I do think Big Boss will win that. And then if it's Umeki versus Big Boss, I'm going to give it to Big Boss, honestly. I think Big Boss will make that upset. Rob versus Peach is super awkward. Big hitboxes for Rob will be nice, unless Umeki just kind of smothers him with offense. So I'm going to give it to Big Boss there. Now we have Gluttony versus Bloss. Gluttony will win because he is Gluttony. Then we have Skeleton versus Xavier. Low-key, Xavier's going to win that. I honestly am pretty confident. I would bet on this set probably. Xavier's Wii Fit Trainer will beat Skeleton's Kazuya, absolutely. He is so ridiculous. Plus that camp game is going to be super strong. And then Gluto will probably beat either player. I mean, Kazuya versus Wario is scary. I don't know if he's going to go Link either, but I do think Gluto is just so like stronger to the point where it is fine. If it's Xavier, honestly, Loki a little bit more awkward, but I do still think that Gluto will win that. Pocket versus Yu, I don't know who Yu is, but Pocket will win that. Of course, they are a very strong Steve main, so it is totally going to be fine. And then Hedo versus Demon. Hedo actually made it to the winners finals of the pre-local, so he's potentially back, question mark. Bowser's back, better than ever. So Hedo will probably win that, and then I still think Pocket will beat Hedo. I mean, Bowser versus like Steve is so bad. It is like so bad, and Pocket will win that. And for the final pool, we have Spargo versus Suzune. Suzune, the Japanese Mewtwo, who is God, but Spargo is the current actual God of the game instead of a God Mewtwo. So unfortunately for Suzune, that's a rough pull there. Apple Reviewer versus Lammers. I think that Me Brawler does so well versus Me Gunner, because I think if you just full hop, Gunner can't really do anything except hard call you out, and then you can just kind of hit him for a billion different things. So Apple Reviewer will win that, and then Spargo will unfortunately beat Apple Reviewer. Shout out to my Me Brawler brethren, but I think Apple Reviewer, if you don't play BDK versus Cloud, I think it's really hard to get in or to, like, you know, control his jumps. Apple Reviewer is very good at it, but I do think Spargo will win that. Maybe Apple Reviewer will take a game, but Spargo's going to win that. Then we have Toriguri versus Latios. Toriguri will win that. It is really hard to deal with this top Banjo. And then Cosmos versus Ukit. I will give it to Cosmos there, but I think Toriguri is going to beat Cosmos regardless. I think Toriguri is going to make it out here into having to play Spargo, which that's going to be a hot set. And now we're not going to go on StarGG for the rest of it. We're going to go to upsets.gg to fill out a bracket. So obviously the ones that are the upsets already, you can't actually say, like, I can't be like, oh, well, I'm going to, you know, continue these upsets because it just goes on the top 64 seeds. If you want to fill out a bracket, you can at upsets.gg. I think Spargo will beat Toriguri. It'll be close, but Spargo will win that. Krepsele versus T. Again, this could be MBD versus T. I think T is going to win, honestly, regardless, because I feel like T has a lot of experience against Akola in terms of the Steve, and T gets pretty close. He loses, but he gets pretty close, so I'm going to give it to T there. Then we have Tweak versus Riddles. I think Tweak has been playing really well recently. I'm not even sure if Riddles is going to get there because of I think his pool was a little bit rough for him with Gact, and I think Tweak, honestly, Gact might win, but Tweak will probably win that. We have Raru and Beast Mode Paul. Beast Mode Paul is so good. I can see, you know what? I'm going to give it to Paul. I'm going to give the upset there. We have Sonics versus Taike. Sonics does not lose the mirror match. Cola versus Reflow. I feel like Reflow will do very well in this bracket, or in this like set, but I do think Cola will kind of pull it out of his hat randomly. We have Hurt versus Dabuzz. I'm giving it to Dabuzz. Dabuzz is really, really good versus Snake. I think they've played once before, and Hurt was victorious, but that was in Dabuzz's flop era. No, but Dabuzz is just so good. I think he will win that. Lima versus Louis Money. I think Lima will win. It's always a close set, but I do think Lima has the edge against those. We have Akola will win, absolutely. Zomba versus Shiny Mark. The last time they played, Zomba kind of destroyed him, but I do think Shiny Mark has kind of shirred up in the Rob matchup, so I do think Shiny Mark will win that. Shootone versus Jazzo. I'm gonna give it to Shootone. I don't know how you beat the Aegis as a Shoto player, to be honest. MKLeo versus Ken. MKLeo does really well versus Ken as far as I'm aware, so I think MKLeo will win that. We have Mia versus Umeki. I think Mia has the set record, and of course is Mia in general. Gluttony versus Pocket. I'm gonna give it to Pocket. I do think that Gluttony struggles with Steve, and Pocket one of the best Steves in the world, so, you know, I'm gonna give it to them. We have Light versus Kaninabe. Hot set. I do think the last time they played, Light won barely, but Light has been so good recently that I have to give it to him. I want to say Kaninabe because maybe he's like learned a couple things about the Ditto. Maybe he's better and like back and better than ever, but I do think Light will win that. We have Snow versus Siski. I don't know. That's a hard one. I don't know how Snow did versus Yaoda when Yaoda was more active, and I don't know the Marios that Siski has access to, so I'm going to give it to Snow there, actually. And now let's go back up top. And of course, this is only winner's bracket. You can't do loser's bracket because there's so many different variations. I'm gonna give Spargo over T. Oh, actually, no, wait. T beat him twice at, twice over the weekend of Cirque and the Invitational. So maybe T's gonna win that. Maybe Spargo's been a little bit more sure of himself. Ooh, that's close. I don't know. I'm gonna come back to that one. Let me ignore it for now. We have Tweak versus Beast Mode Paul. Even though Beast Mode Paul is really good, I will give it to Tweak there. Sonics versus Cola. I'm gonna give it to Sonics. I don't know, man. Sonics has been struggling versus Roy, but Cola did lose to him at the Luminosity tournament. That Spargo got his second Roy win, so I'm going to give it to Sonics there. Dabuzz versus Lima. Dabuzz really struggles with Lima, but I do think Dabuzz, he played really well at Let's Make Moves, so I'm going to give it to Dabuzz. Is he entering Street Fighter? Oh, that changes everything. I didn't even think about the fact that he's entering Street Fighter. I'm going to give it to Lima. Cola versus Shiny Mark. God, I hope Shiny Mark beats Zomba because I want to see this set, because 100%, with literally zero doubt in my mind, a little doubt, Cola's very very good. With almost no doubt in my mind, Shinemark is winning that. He is probably the best player versus Steve in the world, or at the very least top 3 with Spargo and Sonics. He is ridiculous at that matchup. There's clearly no Pika anywhere near as good as him, or there's just not even a good Pika in general in Japan. Sorry to all the Japanese Pikas, but Akola will not know what to do, and Shinemark will win that. Shutone versus Leo. You guys know the story. Shutone's gonna win that. Or Leo will finally beat his demon. Actually, you know, Leo's been playing super well. I'm gonna give it to Leo. I think Shutone's gonna win, but I'm gonna give it to Leo for the fun. Then we have Mia versus Pocket. Pocket's been really good versus Game & Watch recently. So I'm gonna give it to Pocket, actually. Mia will probably have to go the Steve Ditto, and I don't know how proficient either of them are at it. We have Light versus Snow. I think Mario does really well in that matchup, so I'm going to give it to Snow. I think that Light, even though he's very strong at a lot of things, will just kind of be wrong a couple times, get up smashed out of shield, get forward smashed, for up smashing like a tech chase and be wrong or something like that. So yeah, I'm gonna go there. Sparkle versus T again. Oh God, I'm gonna, that's so hard. That is such a difficult call. I'm gonna give it to T. I feel like T is just so hard to adapt against just because he suddenly just does random weird stuff. So I'm gonna give it to T there. I think Spargo will low-key end up winning the tournament, but I think T's gonna beat him there. They have T versus Tweak. No matter how bad that matchup is, I think Tweak is gonna win. He just doesn't lose his bad matchups. Like Tweak loses against super, super good players, and Duck Hunt specifically is a bad matchup, but I think that's the worst matchup for Diddy Kong. And I think Tweak is just gonna win that because every time they've played, Tweak has won, I'm pretty sure, even though it's like, oh my God, it's the worst matchup ever, and Tweak is like 3-0 on T or something like that. At least like post lockdown. So Sonics versus Lima. That matchup's really bad for Bayo, and Lima barely beats players like Wrath, and Wrath is very good. Is Wrath not going? I didn't see his name. I guess Wrath isn't going. But yeah, Sonics is so strong. I think Lima can win, but I think Sonics will win. Shinemark versus Leo. I think Shinemark will beat Leo. I think him losing at the Luminosity Invitational is kind of Shinemark not playing well. So I mean, if Shinemark is playing mid or has like controller interference, I don't think any of this is gonna happen. But if he's on his game, I think Shinemark will straight up just beat everyone there, which is kind of crazy. Pocket versus Snow. Snow has beat Akola recently. I don't know how he does versus the other Steves, like 33 Parent Box, as well as Daki. I don't know if Daki just goes Kazuya against him at this point, because Kazuya Mario is known as pretty tough. But also Snow beat who's the good Kazuya in Japan? T. Like, I don't know. Snow can beat the top Kazuyas. He can beat, I don't know. That one's hard. I'm gonna give it to Pocket. I think Pocket will have a run this tournament, and that's such a weird top 8 winners. Is that really what I believe? Yeah, because I think Pocket will beat Mia. Is Snow gonna beat Pocket? Low-key, it's probably gonna be this, and that's top 8 winners. That'd be a hype-ass top 8 winners. Then Tweak versus Sonics. I will give it to Sonics in winners. No, I'll give it to Tweak. And then for this other side, Shinemark versus Light. Again, I think Light played quite well in their previous set, and again, I think Shinemark did not play well with the Luminosity Invitational, even though he beat Sonics, which is crazy. But I think Shinemark will win that. Then we have Shinemark versus Tweak. I think Tweak will win that. And then choose 3. I think it is potentially Spargo. I think obviously if Shinemark's in winners, he has a high probability of making it back there. And then the other player in losers that can make a run will be Mia, in my opinion. I think it would be a little bit harder for Akola to make a long losers run after losing to Shinemark. I mean, obviously, again, Akola might just win, but that is what I'm going to say. And then I think realistically it will be Spargo that makes it back to him, and then I think Spargo will win the tournament. Which that's kind of crazy. I do think Spargo is just insane in losers, and I don't... Tweak versus Spargo is always crazy. But I do think Spargo is just kind of, he's on it recently. And yeah, that is, oh no, sorry, you can't see what happened. Oh no. So yeah, this is about how the tournament will play out. Maybe I'm coping with Pika, but I think it's a good bracket for Shinemark other than literally Zomba. I think Zomba and like Zomba here, Shutone here, and Mia here, but I do think all of these upsets are pretty realistic. I think Leo, well, Shutone's been playing so well recently. If Shutone wins this, I think Shutone will probably beat Shinemark, but Shinemark has been getting better versus Olimar. I don't know, man. It's a hard thing. I think Mia will actually lose to Pocket. I think this is absolutely happening, that you can't see because it's off screen right now, but there's so many interesting sets that are going to be happening at Genesis, of course, because it is Genesis and it is always going to be exciting. What do you think about this? Also, for reference, I'm not going to Genesis because 1, money, 2, Valentine's Day, and 3, everything's been getting worse in terms of diseases, and I don't want to get sick again because I got sick at Supernova and that sucked. So yeah, before you ask in the comments, it is here. If you ask in the comments, I know you didn't watch the whole video, so how dare you? But yeah, as always, social media partner stuff is down below. Don't forget to watch Larry Lur's, restream of it. Shout outs. You can always go to his channel if you want to watch restreams of majors. I might be doing it. I don't think I will because I have plans the whole weekend. But yeah, as always, social media partner stuff is down below, and I will see you all next time. Peace.